what we're seeing in terms of the government cuts and the suffering on behalf of the users in the GHA is not actually the issue per se. It's a symptom of the issue, which is austerity by government. Government is cutting everywhere, and unfortunately they are cutting majorly in our fundamental public services, which is where they should be cutting the least.
Aren't the delays at the GHA to some extent explicable by the backlog caused by COVID?
I think it's fair to say that to an extent that has been the case, and this is why Together Gibraltar has been generous with government in waiting a few months instead of simply jumping on what appeared to be a backlog. But when you see that everything has now practically gone back to normal, that we're ready to welcome tourists, that we're looking to get ourselves on green lists and expose Gibraltar as a center of possibilities post-COVID, the first thing that we should have in order is our fundamental health service.
In terms of issues such as the resumption of tourism, couldn't it be argued that this is what's needed to boost the economy to help avoid austerity?
Well, I'm sure that the government will spin it that way, but what we need at the very start is to have a decent functioning health service. Imagine what you're saying is true and we start getting these tourists coming in, and then you have naturally a proportion of tourists who need health service. How on earth are we going to deal with that? Just simply that little point, when we have our own citizens trying to access healthcare and getting nowhere and getting sicker as a result. You have stories of people trying to access for 40, 50 minutes, not getting anywhere. People who started off with irritable bowel syndrome, which has now turned cancerous because they didn't get any solutions or any attention. I mean, these are serious issues that have to come before any build-up of government coffers or any tourism or any great, bright marketing advert that we might put out in the UK or abroad.
You say there have been cuts at the GHA and that this, not staff absenteeism, is responsible, for example, for the lack of appointments at the PCC. Can you give more detail?
Well, I think it's a terrible situation that the doctors have been blamed for this. I think this situation comes directly from government policy and from the cuts that the government are implementing, and for the government to pass the buck, launch an investigation and blame the GPs who we have relied upon, who have carried us through this pandemic in the last year and who are breaking their backs trying to maintain the health service with all the cuts that we are seeing. I mean, it's absolutely shameful, it's insulting, and it's ungrateful to say it as kindly as possible. And from my part and the part of my party, I want to apologize to these doctors for being treated the way they are. And I think that the government needs to take ownership and responsibility for their own policy and stop blaming others and deal with the situation and help the innocent citizens of Gibraltar who need attention instead of passing the buck on the doctors who have saved the day in the last year.